What is going on, everybody? Ryan Leary here with the You Should Know podcast. I have a very fun guest today, and he's already making me laugh just by staring directly into the screen. So, if you're listening, you'll hear the vibe. If you're watching, you'll get it. Carlton, welcome in, brother. How are you?
Good to be with you today, Ryan. Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, we got to talk a little bit. We're going to be talking about skills-based hiring and some other cool stuff. But before we kick off, we got to talk a little bit while I forget where I was. I was in traveling somewhere, and I was talking to you. And we were talking now for like 30 minutes in pre-show, trying to get to the actual show. So hopefully the pre-show is not better than the actual show because that tends to happen. But one quick fact, I'll have to bring this up because I literally just learned this about you like 30 seconds ago. The X chair.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about this thing because I don't know, man. You told me to look it up and I did, and I don't know if I can do that.
Look, I got to tell you, having a home base office, you need a comfortable chair. I was on the hunt for a new chair. I bought an X chair, and guess what, though? I try to get it in mesh and in
Okay.
like an ice color. They have different colors you can get it in the mesh. And when the box arrives, they sent me a brown leather chair. So I was like, well, that's not what I ordered, but these chairs are very heavy, very heavy. And well, I just decided I'll just stick with the brown chair. So I didn't get what I wanted, but it's a comfortable chair. And if you need a chair, go get an extra. I
Go
know
get it.
this is not
Yeah.
a promo for them, but
I
I'm
don't
not
know.
unhappy with it.
I looked it up and I was like, oh, I don't know if I can
They're
do
pricey.
that. But yeah, but I am on the hunt for a chair. I stand mostly at the desk. I was telling Carlton, I mostly stand at the desk. But the times when I sit, it sucks when you don't have a good chair. So anyhow, Carlton, welcome in. Before we kick off, let's do this. How about you just do a quick overview of Carlton and let the world know who you are?
Sure, I'll try to keep it succinct. I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. We then moved to San Diego, California, and New York. Back to Denver, where I finished high school, played football, ran track, also played basketball, was in theater club, interestingly enough. Never took
Oh,
the stage.
theater
No, we
club.
did lights, sound, ticketing, set design and movement, things of that nature. I then went to matriculate at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Didn't even know where Wisconsin was at the time, but
No, I was there one time.
yeah, it's a Jesuit school. It's very
One time.
cold. Met a lot of lifelong friends there. Joined a fraternity, and then moved to Chicago, where I'm based now. I went into technology, graduated with a degree in business administration and economics, also marketing, and then moved to California for a little bit. Worked for Oracle, worked for Google, working for the CEO of Oracle, Larry Ellison's office, then to Google, where I work for Google's largest division, ads, which encompasses travel, payments, shopping, also search ads. It used to be Gmail ads,
Right.
YouTube ads. Spent some time up at YouTube, with friends. Used to do a lot of like dog fooding, so I worked on the original bots, right? So like all of the Chat GPT, these are just online chat bots. And so I was
Yeah,
there in the
yeah.
early days working on that, working on AI, working on machine learning. And then I moved back to Chicago where I started working in cybersecurity and most recently connected vehicles, which is to say remote start diagnostics and remote connection to services. All right, that is my life in a
That's
nutshell. I
you.
don't have a partner at this time, no kids, no pets, and I live in downtown Chicago.
We got the life story there. That was good. That was good. And so, all right. So tell me this. We're gonna talk about skills based hiring. We're gonna talk about fit and stuff like that. I want to start on fit. When we talked, this was a bit ago. We talked about skills based hiring and where fit is an issue. What are you seeing today? Like, why is fit such a problem?
It's cultural, and you know that encompasses a lot of things. Um, Technology tends to be a very male dominated culture, so women have
Yeah.
have challenges penetrating it. People of color have challenges penetrating it. Um, the other thing is it depends on age. You know, if you look at a company like Meta, if you're 40 plus, you're probably not a cultural fit for Meta.
Right.
They skew on the young side. Now they might, if they heard this, take umbrage with me.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
not trying to be provocative. I'm just saying that some of the tech companies tend to skew younger. Okay, and that's just obvious. And then if you're, for example, in banking, uh, it's again cultural. It's New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. If you're coming from Nebraska, maybe they're like, you know. So these things happen,
Right.
and that's the fit. So people don't know how to describe fit, but I'm describing it for you.
Yeah. So where are people getting this wrong? I feel like fit's interesting for me. I mean, I haven't been in a corporate setting for probably almost 10, wow, coming up on 10 years now. That's fantastic. Go me. But but where, I mean, I could think back to when I was in the corporate setting. It was uncomfortable for a lot of people, right? Like people weren't, they didn't feel like they belonged. They didn't feel as if they were part of, maybe not the company, but their individual groups. But where, I guess the question I have is where are people getting this wrong? Are we overthinking this?
Well, I think a lot of it just has to do with how people come up. What I mean by come up is, you know, high school, college, post college, um, the groups that you work in early in your career. If you are, you know, coming up in a diverse work or diverse culture, high school, college, you know, post college, that tends to carry forward. But if you're not, uh, then what happens is that you start to uh, surround yourself homogeneously, and I mean that to the extent that a lot of women work in human resources, which is where I work. Okay, and it tends to be a female-dominated culture where a guy, if they're not comfortable, could feel isolated or excluded. And so that's a fit, right? Right? So let's say you're a CHRO, you've got to have the wherewithal to say, hey, I have a
Mhm.
team of 10, and right now, all eight of them, or nine of them are women. Well, where do you put your next incremental hire? See, for me, not to say that it's supposed to be affirmative action, but we do need to make sure that we're making sure that the groups have a diverse opinion. And so
Right.
put a guy in that next position. It doesn't mean that you're excluding a qualified woman, but you need to put a male in that position. Secondarily, if you're a computer science team or software or engineering team, it's all male. Maybe you consider putting two females on that team. Because when you get more people in the room with diverse opinions, you get better outcomes. And the science proves it.
Yeah. So do you think culture and fit are the same thing? Do people
Yes,
intertwine
yes,
these
yes.
words?
They don't use those harmoniously or simultaneously, but I do because I am the recruiter. So I know what is occurring when the decision making is happening, which is why I'm providing
Right.
the examples I'm trying to provide.
Yeah, which I wanted to ask you this earlier. So we went through your background. How did you actually get into recruiting?
Well, I wanted to be in tech sales. My dad was a part of the build of the internet. Okay, so my dad used to work for Digital Equipment Corporation, and then he went to work for Ameritech. And the internet was
Yeah.
largely born in Chicago, Illinois. And most people don't probably know that the cell phone was also, okay, through Motorola.
I did not know
Yeah, the
that.
very first cellular phone call was made from Soldier Field on a brick phone, okay? And anyway, my dad worked in tech. My mother worked in tech. Okay, my mother worked for John Malone, who created a company called VCTV, Viewer Controlled Television. It was the very first edition, if you will, of streaming TV, where you could control what you
Right.
watched. And anyway, so I grew up in a household of tech nerds. My cousins went to Cornell for tech. My other cousin, University of Illinois for computer science. So it's just built into the family. Even my sister, she used to work for Uber Technologies. And anyway, I just always wanted to work in tech, and I wanted to sell in tech. But coming out of college, you couldn't sell, not as a young person. So they said, well, maybe you go into recruiting. I didn't even know what the heck a recruiter did. And then I got into recruiting. Then I eventually got into sales, and then I came back to recruiting. Tech
Got it.
recruiting and
Okay.
tech recruiting sales. So that's
Yeah, because nobody ever says I want to. They don't come out of school and say I want to be a
they don't
recruiter,
even know what
right?
it is. Yeah,
So,
agreed.
yeah, yeah. So I've always wanted to. I always wanted to ask you that. All right. So I wanted to get into AI, and I know this is kind of like the trend, right? The buzzword, but AI in hiring. So like tools, trends, some ethics, type questions here. When you look at AI in hiring, and I feel like you're going to have a good opinion on this here, good take. When you look at AI in hiring, what's the part that everyone's kind of, I don't want to say messing up, but like what aren't they getting right? Like we know what these tools can do. We know what tools that predated AI could do, but what are we not doing properly right now?
So the thing is that the better tools in AI, I'll name a few. One of them is Humanly. I pretty much like that tool. I've evaluated no less than maybe 50 tools. And Humanly works really well in terms of sifting through the queue, okay, or batch of candidates who have applied. We're somewhat in a soft recession, and we have been for the past year, where you post a position and you will receive 200 respondents
Yeah.
within an hour. Okay. Now, if you're a recruiter who has at minimum 10 requisitions you're covering, that means 2,000 candidates. No
Yeah.
human can go through 2,000 candidates rapidly. You can't do it.
Right.
So you layer on your ATS, your applicant tracking system, something like Humanly, which will allow you to surface candidates based on keywords that at least make better sense to review, right? So you
Right.
go through those top 10, and then you go through another 10, and then you keep going through tens until you get through the 1,000 people who applied. Uh, and so that's very helpful in terms of surfacing better results. Next up, it will help automate messaging, right? So like now you can,
Mm.
house some templates in there and then communicate the messaging there. Next,
Right. Right.
you can provide some notes in there, right? So talk to candidate, and then we call this candidate management, right? So you could talk to candidate today. Candidate is very happy. Candidate has a bonus in January, so not ready to move right now. Okay. Follow up, and then you can calendar, right? So then we calendar it. Then it can connect calendars to people inside the organization. So let's say you talk to candidate, they're very sanguine about the opportunity. Now you can bring up hiring manager, connect them through calendaring, because calendaring is hugely important. Getting people
And difficult.
is huge problem in terms of pulling people through the process and keeping the candidates energy high, keeping the candidates experience high, which is what we need to do if we want to close the candidate for acceptance to offer. So these are some of the functions that work quite well.
Right.
There are other marketing pieces you can do in terms of batching
Oh,
up
sure.
candidates and then and then communicating with a pool of candidates. The other one I want to mention is Cursor, Cursor. It is an AI tool that removes engineers. It's like an auto
Oh,
engineer. and
Okay.
CEOs really like Cursor. The last one I'll leave you with is CoderPad. I really like CoderPad because it's a technology that allows engineers to conduct interviews remotely. So one of the things that we know is that getting engineers through the interview process can be challenging with the technical phone interviews on the front end, and then obviously bringing them through the on-site interview process. But when you bring a lot of candidates through a technical phone interview, you can get interview fatigue by the engineers, and you're also wasting the engineers' time doing interviews. So CoderPad replaces that, and
Right.
it still keeps the candidate experience high. So those are some 3 AI tools that we use in recruiting to improve the experience and also hiring velocity, but also acceptance.
Yeah, so let's stay there for a bit. Let's stay on skills because we're talking skills based hiring. Let's so I want to stick here for a moment. When we're looking at called human skills, right? We're talking when we're talking about skills. Which skills do you think have become non-negotiable this year?
Well, if you're talking technical skills, obviously JavaScript or things.
Just skill. I think just skills overall as a candidate. What skills do we need to see? Are we talking soft skills, hard skills?
Here's what I'll say to you. It depends. It depends on the function. Um, Soft skills are the most important skills for anything that involves human interaction. So if you're in sales, recruiting, human resources, legal, the soft skills you need are obviously clear communication skills. You need to be able to have really good presentation skills. And I mean that both image wise as well as boardroom
Yeah.
presence wise, okay? Like true presentation skills. Uh, and so those skills are necessary. Creativity is paramount, always has been. How do you think differently? How do you solve problems? How do you uh, overcome challenges? These skills are, paramount. But if you're in a hard function, such as computer design, UX design, where you're essentially working by yourself all the time, the skill you need then is self motivation. Okay, you've got to be able to like get up,
You gotta be able to keep it
get
up.
up
Yeah.
and get yourself to it. Right, you need to be able to, plan your days and plan your weeks out. And so, being a planned person is a skill that is required. Then you can't just be like some crazy ass artist. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll get to it whenever. No, no, no. There are deadlines in corporate America. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
How do we flesh out like so the some of the challenges I know we've been having we've in a lot of the conversations that we've been having has been fraud, detecting fraud with candidates that we're interviewing uh, from all different levels, right? Like I mean, like I might not be me. I could be someone else, right? I could be interviewing as me, but someone else is answering. But how do we actually start to really look at candidate skills and fraud or detect fraud or and really just kind of make sure we're getting what we think it is that we're getting.
yeah, well, that's what we call the test drive, which is to, put someone in a real life scenario. And that way you can flesh it out. So if you give someone like an online test, you're going to get fraud.
Hmm.
You're going to get fraud. Someone's going to take the test for them. You don't even know if they were the person who took the test, right? Now, CoderPad eliminates this to a degree, which is that you've got to register, you've got to be on camera, they time the questions. So, all of that sort of eliminates any issue with regard to fraud. But
Hmm.
but otherwise, you got to give candidates a real live test drive. So tell me, how would you, perform if this were the case? We used to call them behavioral interview questions. Now we just call them test drive questions.
Yeah. All right. So I want to jump in. I want to throw some rapid fire questions at you. Um, don't have to go into depth here. We'll be quick. I got a couple of them for you. I want to wrap up with this. So you ready for this? All right, let's do it. So what skill tells you that someone learns fast?
I don't know
I
the
stumped you
answer to
already?
that. Maybe I'm slow. I mean, the thing is,
Ah,
the way that you can test if someone learns fast is what back then you give them a puzzle to solve, right? And that again is something of a test drive. Give them a problem to solve and see how long it takes them to solve the problem, which is what you
yeah,
just did to me. And it took me a little bit. Okay.
yeah.
But it depends on how fast you mean fast, right? I moved pretty fast, but for some people that might be too slow. It depends.
Right. What's the one skill that you would test before wanting to even read the resume?
Well, they're verbal or written execution,
Mhm.
right? If the resume
Yeah.
contains run-on sentences, poor grammar, poor structure, then that eliminates them because the resume is the marketing device. It is you before we meet you.
Right. All right. I got one more. I want to do one more question for you. What skill, and this is your opinion, what skill separates top performers from everyone else?
The ability to move quickly. So, like you were expressing, you have to move fast, but you have to be accurate and you have to be logical. You have to be pinpoint. So, the ability is almost like I like to reference like a wide receiver in the NFL. You've got to know
Hmm.
who's the defender. You got to know who's the play. You got to know the snap count. You got to know the route. And you got to catch a ball flying in the air at 50 miles per hour while you're off your cleats and come to the ground with both feet in bounds. That is what I'm talking about here.
There's no difficulty there. I mean, like that's easy, right? That's it's funny. I was actually so sadly the Eagles lost yesterday, but it was there was a catch that was made. It was Devontae Smith that made it, where he was completely horizontal
You see what I mean? Yeah.
to the ground, and and he made the catch, but he made it up in they were in Dallas, so the sun was coming through the stadium, and just to know, to have the wherewithal to know where he was, make the catch, lay himself out, come down with the ball, and that wasn't the initial play, right? The initial play was called off in route, right? So and I know they train hard for this, but yeah, that always amazes me. And sports can be tied to so many of the things that we
Well,
do
it just
in
requires
in
it
recruiting.
requires concentration, is what I'm getting at. And that's where you
Yeah.
need to be able to move quickly in business, is to be able to focus, be able to concentrate, and be able to execute at a high level despite all of the surrounding challenges.
Yeah, for sure. Carlton, this has been amazing. I appreciate you giving us some time. I know you're very busy. And we have the Thanksgiving holiday coming up, so you will be hopefully doing something
Yes,
fun
with the
and
family in
not
Milwaukee.
working.
So, go Bears. Thank you, Ryan, for your time today, and hope to see you again here soon.